Tanzayagwa. My name is Kelly Lendsay, and I want to welcome all of our Luminary partners as we embark on this planning process for Luminary, advancing Indigenous innovation for economic transformation, employment, and well-being. Now, why is this initiative so important? Well, together we're going to address an enormous engagement gap. We are going to work together to co-create a strategy and plan. Number 3, we're going to address Indigenous business and community economic priorities. And number 4, with our Elders Council and with the teachings of Albert Marshall, we're going to follow his teaching of two-eyed seeing, which is how do you respect and value both Western and traditional ways of knowing and doing. So in this video, you're going to see 8 pillars. We have voices and perspectives from different Canadians presented, and that is designed to help stimulate your neurons, fire them up, get your creative and critical thinking going. So when you meet in your strategy sessions and in our Luminary national gatherings, we can have that input from the wisdom of the crowd for the creation of our strategy and plan. So let me conclude by this. We can paint a new picture. We can go from the history of exclusion of residential schools and dismal communities that look like this to a vision of growing healthy economies and communities. It's about growing healthy businesses and a healthy workforce. This truly is about an inclusive Canada, so let's get to work.
When we think about Indigenous peoples here in Canada, they are the true innovators that have brought us to where we are in today's world. When it comes to navigation systems, when it comes to land-based learning, it all began with Indigenous knowledge.
You know, we're innovators. We've been innovators for forever. And we've been barterers, we've been negotiators, we've been traders. So, you know, I mean, we're natural, right? So I think that innovation and technology are huge today, and I think that we could play a very big role in that.
One of the ways that we can help build capacity is through the creation of our own institutions, our own centers of excellence that will have expertise in assisting us in terms of sharing leading practices, doing research, doing case studies, so we can all learn from the advances that we're all making in different parts of Canada.
So those who own the data control the story. And the story around Indigenous people in Canada has been misconstrued, and it has been mistold and misrepresented.
And not knowing enough about our people, where our businesses are, what the gaps truly are, what are the solutions that we need to work on today so that they're successful tomorrow.
Gone are the days where institutions come in and parachute into a community and do their research and leave. It has to be about true partnerships, authentic engagement, and actually solving real-world contemporary problems that are actually going to lead to changes.
Have a discussion around, okay, who are the local experts in the community? Now, they may be youth, they may be elder, they may be people with mental health challenges or ability issues, there may be the LGBTQ population, whoever it is, we bring them to the table and we start to design the questions.
And really giving up that power and letting our Indigenous partners take the lead in the work that we're doing in the communities, and really understanding what that means to listen and know and learn. And one of the things I've also learned from Kelly is, you know, the deep listening, stop and listen deeply.
I always think about from a First Nations perspective in the importance of reciprocity, and that research is not just knowledge extraction from our communities, but that it also translates into benefiting the communities, not only just First Nations communities, the Aboriginal communities, which means also off-reserve, the Métis, Inuit.
We actually just focus on applied research, where we're not just collecting data, but we're collecting that data and working collaboratively with First Nation communities to solve an issue. So it's an issue that they've brought to us.
You're working with an Indigenous community, you have to be consulting with them and make sure that all the protocols are in place.
sharing, for example. In this territory, the Mi'kmaq territory, people are really concerned with sharing and well-being. That's been their ethos for 14,000 years.
You know, I go back to that universities discover, but discovery is not necessarily innovation. To me, innovation is going to come from the business application of those discoveries.
That's the issue, right? So if we collect this and we have it, where do we store it? How do we use it? And who has access to it? And what's interesting is that the blockchain and technology pieces that are coming out of that are revolutionizing the internet. But what makes the blockchain and the software essentially of the blockchain immutable is that it's consensus-based, each server. So you would have different nodes where the information is based, and in order to access the information, all 13 nodes have to have approval based on the governance that you set out. What does that remind you of? Sort of traditional Indigenous ways of governance. What we have done is we've taken that concept and now used technology and turned it into a software.
That is, again, putting the control and the ownership with the community, and that they make the determinations around how they would like their knowledge shared. And again, we do that through ceremony. We do it in ways that it can be shared. So rather than writing, technical, academic articles all the time, we do all kinds of translation to make it consumable, so that it reaches more people, so that that to me is ethical mobilization. If you isolate it and keep it in language of the disciplines, then we're really perpetuating a colonial understanding of knowledge. So we definitely need to rethink. Sometimes that's great, but that can't be the only way that knowledge is translated.
I think research to begin with is to inform and help people make decisions. And in terms of Indigenous business, I think much more is needed.
When we think about innovation, I think about what we're doing as a company, and we're using our own Indigenous thought, and we're bringing that forward into the businesses that we run and acquire. And what we're trying to do is trying to teach non-Indigenous business about our value system, about our way of doing things, and making sure that our people are proud.
In everybody's backyard, there's an opportunity, whether it's resource, whether it's if it's mining for metals, whether it's forestry, whether it's water, whether it's renewable energy, whether it's the people in the community. There's something that somebody has in their backyard that can be a long-term sustainable source of revenue for the community, because everybody's got to think about something. And I don't think a lot of communities have thought long and hard about that, because they're in a state of survival. They're in a state of trying to heal themselves from the residential school, from the impacts of the genocidal policies. So they're surviving. But now more and more leadership are thinking, okay, we got to start thinking about the future.
We sometimes don't know how to approach those new areas of business. And when I think about what we do as a business, we're taking the time to do research, to build a connection in the community, understand what the bigger concepts are within our own economy in Saskatchewan. And so we're thinking about those types of things when we're thinking about bringing our innovation, our thought into new sectors for growth.
I think there's an opportunity for Indigenous people to create employment. Kelly talked about 40 to 60% of the jobs in Indigenous business are employing non-Indigenous people. That impact is often lost or not generally known. Similarly, the recent report from Manitoba talking about the GDP impact by First Nations in the billions of dollars. It changes the conversation that people have about what Indigenous people contribute to the economy and the role that we can play, and that's largely unrealized.
The role we can play as researchers is that working with communities, we can identify where the economic drivers are, where the economic needs are, and do everything we can to organize training that's going to be culturally relevant, culturally grounded.
But I think a major opportunity is for Indigenous workers to benefit from innovation. I've been working on a project with ESDC looking at teaching the skills and technology stack that are required to work remotely as an effective office worker, with the objective of training Indigenous researchers to be able to go back to their home communities and still maintain city jobs.
And also, I think it's a nurturing place too, because they come up against that trauma of research and the harms done intergenerationally through research. And I think it becomes empowering for community members to see research done in their way, on their terms. It makes a huge difference.
Given proper research, it also it helps Indigenous communities prioritize for their economic development plans. It helps Indigenous youth decide on career paths.
Right. How do we go about increasing talent? That's my job, right? As a researcher, I need to make sure that we're bringing in Indigenous PhDs, Indigenous master's students, even on the undergraduate level. How do we start bringing them into the research process so that we're starting to mentor and coach some of these students and getting them ready, right? But doing it in a way that we're kind of reflecting the ethical needs that we've got, right? To understand what are the ethics around dealing with communities or dealing with Indigenous groups or associations.
Their project, they own it. And we just help, pull ideas together. We help do a lot of the writing. We help get the grants. We do that kind of work. And then as we go through the process, we go through whatever ethics protocols that the community may have or elder protocols. And if we treat research as ceremony, then we're entering into a relationship.
In the research network, the innovators are the companies. The innovators are the clients that we help. So they are the ones that turn this knowledge that the students are sharing with them and into their products and into their commercialization efforts.
So research is such an important tool to enable us to plan correctly for the future. And right now we're in a sort of state of not knowing enough.
If the community is part of the collaboration, hopefully from the beginning, the community is saying what's important to them and what they need from the lessons learned. Those ideas can be shared and help other communities, consider them, make them their own, and really benefit from research that's being done.
We've been researched a lot. Research, well-intentioned, sounds great, but are you just doing this one research project? Are you researching for the next 20 years? How can we help with that research rather than just be studied?
One of the important things that researchers have to keep in mind is this concept of knowledge and recognize and respect Indigenous knowledges and Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Just because it hasn't been researched or because it hasn't been proven, as they say, the knowledge is just as valuable.
We have created and we're implementing within the college is called our Innovation Entrepreneurship Mindset Competencies Framework. It's pretty big. So the framework has 4 core competencies based on the medicine wheel. So we use the medicine wheel as a teaching tool.
The research hopefully will help us better build strategies and help and sustain economic development, but also support our individual business people, our entrepreneurs, as well as support our communities.
So research does an exposure role. It's got an opportunity to respect knowledge, and it's collaborative. And so these roles, I think, are absolutely pivotal to really transforming economies.
Many solutions or many ways have been proposed that seem to work well as compared to the traditional models where the university researchers will come into a community and try to solve a problem and then they disappear without necessarily impacting the community itself.
The gap is on the graduate side, right? So I'm working with Mary Beth Doucette here at Cape Breton to start thinking about things like how do we decolonize Indigenous graduate students' experiences with business schools and graduate business school research, right? So we need to be working on lots of different levels. So the work that I'm doing with Mary Beth Doucette looks at what is the experience of Indigenous graduate students? How can we help decolonize that experience? How can we help them in terms of creating a community of Indigenous researchers or graduate students to help them move forward in doing that?
The best investments that can be made is what I call policy research. It's kind of disrupting the whole incentive process that exists at universities to look at research that can inform decision-making, policy, and programming.
We have to start looking beyond that in terms of what's the opportunity going to be presenting in the next 10 years, not what worked 10 years ago. So,
and one of the best quotes that I had, that I heard throughout was nothing about us without us. And that just resonated very strongly with me in regards to the work that I'm currently doing and involved in, and just understanding that when reporting on this work, that it's key and important for the community to be very involved and to be, it be their story, not something that we've created. It's their story, their words, their experiences.
But here we're now looking forward to seeing how we can implement those actions into our daily routines of not only building partnerships within educational outcomes and collaborations on research projects that are going to really help tell us a different story to where we're going in Canada and supporting Indigenous business.
So that's where I think the importance of research comes in helping a community make the right decision, because chances are the community has limited resources and cannot afford to make sometimes a wrong decision.
I think it'll help to increase Indigenous businesses in many other sectors that we're currently not occupying right now in Canada. Two is that I think it'll help to create partnerships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous companies to make collaborations and work together. And I think it'll help to inform Indigenous communities on the labor market trends that are happening in their regions or their area.
Well, I hope these insights and perspectives that you just received on these 8 pillars is going to be helpful in getting you ready for your discussion in the strategy sessions and the Luminary national gatherings with your Luminary Charter peers. I want to close this video with some words and insights from my friend Kelly Foxcroft-Poirier, a graphic artist, illustrator, who's been with us on this Luminary journey. Kelly's going to underscore the importance of people, dialogue, and connectors like all of you who, working together, are going to help transform our economies and create the well-being we're all seeking. Over to you, Kelly.
My name is Kelly Foxcroft-Poirier. My traditional name is Chi'ilumka. I'm from the Tsishat First Nation. As we walk the path together, we need to recenter and connect to community priorities and needs. And that means gathering folks in dialogue, because what we know is that the wisdom of the people in the crowd, the whole, is much better than our individual parts, and honoring all of the different lived experience and wisdom that people can bring in. We might have shared values, but we need to acknowledge that value systems are different and we have different values-based approaches. Being able to understand that, it starts with a conversation, and that we need to look at the ways that we are more the same than different. So we have interconnected capacities and competencies, and that we can be linked by good intention and then action. If we don't know where to start, we start with humility. And even if we lack the knowledge, we can support each other to connect and be good connectors.